Good morning. I really am delighted to be here, and I'd like to thank Anya Lynch and Robert Greer and his good colleagues from the NPC office for inviting me and being so gracious about hosting this conference and having me come to talk with you. You know, Ireland, it's been a pleasure to walk around a bit and see the history of this country, go back beyond or before the 8th century. The history here has a different tradition from the States, and it's a very long tradition that you're building on. And so today, I come to talk with you about going in some new directions. And so this is an interesting challenge, because if we're linked to tradition, we may resist new directions. But yesterday we had wonderful meetings in the Department of Education with Mr. Minister's staff, and it was a pleasure to talk with people who are ready to think new. I come to talk with you, and we almost speak the same language. That's a good thing. And we're going to use this time this morning to have a little short course in the new directions for school, family, and community partnerships. And under the conference title of Great Expectations, which is a lovely title, of course, Anya asked me, you know, so how does your talk fit with our conference theme? And we said, well, we're going to call it Great Expectations, to go from the expectation of good things to the action for good things. And so we need to have the hopes and dreams in our expectations, but that's not good enough. We really have to take the steps to make things happen that you want to have happen in your schools, with your families, with your children, with teachers and principals and so forth. I always like to know who's in this audience, in this lovely facility. So you can tell me if you are here as an employee, an educator who is working in or with the schools. Very good. And how many are here with your EPA group from across the countries? Excellent. We'd like to commend the dance troupe last night who did such a good job. And how many are here as educators from this area or other areas in Ireland? Okay. How many are parents? Yes, indeed. Very good. So today, although the work we're going to talk about is going to be asking you who are parent leaders in EPA and NPC connected to the schools, some of this will be messaging that we hope you will bring back to your schools so that you can prompt the new directions. Tomorrow, I'm going to be working with the NPC staff of trainers. And the good news is that I can announce to you today who are here, particularly from Ireland, but perhaps from other areas as well, is after tomorrow they will be trained to help you to go in these new directions if you so choose to do so. It's very important not to just have some good ideas and go away and say, well, gee, that was interesting. She came all the way, and that was interesting to learn about. We really want to take it to the next step. And so Anya's troop and group and Robert's group and troop in NPC will really be able to help you if you're interested in taking the steps we're going to talk about now for the new directions in school, family, and community partnerships. I call this little short course Then and Now because I'm going to tell you a little history. Not as long as Ireland's history, but going back to the beginning of when I started to work on this topic in 1981. And we've done a good deal of basic research, then field research, and now we open our network to anyone who would really like to join in. And I'm hoping to prompt the NPC to create a network here that you can really help see how this agenda can grow and how we learn from each other. We learn from research, but in research we learn from practitioners, and we learn from the parents who are working as leaders in the schools. And so it's a kind of a partnership, a two-way story. So let's tell this little tale and see what you think at the end. There's a little quiz at the end that I'm going to give to you. And so I want you to think about the topics that we're going to cover in this quick course. First, I like to, let's see if we can get this. Yes, okay. I like to start where I think you're starting from in your schools. We know that everyone across countries are working to make healthy, excellent schools. What do we mean by a healthy school? The issue really is, I'm a sociologist. I don't like you to hold that against me. But we think in terms of place. The context of a school is an important place. And so we want our place in a healthy school to be a partnership school that is welcoming to everybody. Even the principal should want to go most days. And we want students to really be able to know that their school is family-like and that their home is school-like. So I talk in a textbook for college training of future teachers about a family-like school and a school-like family. What do we mean by that? A family-like school is one where the teachers treat the children the way a parent would. Meaning, every child is unique, every child is important, every child has some value and interesting things about them. They have talents to develop. They have a future ahead. This is our school, and we have a family-like school when teachers treat their children in that way. You know, if you have a family-like school, sometimes you'll have a child who will raise his hand in class for the teacher and say, "Mom, you know, what did I just say?" And the notion is they're so comfortable in class that they might think they're talking to their parent at some point in time. A school-like family is one where mom or dad or grandma or someone treats the child the way a teacher would, meaning the message is school is important, you are a student, this is your future, we want you to do your homework, we want you to go to school on time every day, we want you to think of your career and your future and go through high school and graduate from secondary school in good shape, to the best of your ability for every child. That would be a school-like family, giving the message, your job is to be a student all these years. And the notion is, when we have a family-like school and a school-like family, we have the beginning of partnership, because the child is really aware of the same messages in every place. And really all we're talking about is an excellent school. How many of your schools are working to be a partnership place? How many want their schools to be a partnership place? Okay, we're setting an agenda here, folks, okay? And you may have some other ideas about the safe and nurturing place that you would like your schools to be. But place is not good enough these days in the world that we live in. As Robert's introductory comments mentioned, schools are being held accountable for results. And so a good school is not just a safe and nurturing place. It is also a place that produces important results for students. And you know that your schools, in whatever country, are working on various academic results with students. My message is always, it's not just about test scores. Test scores are there, achievement results are very important, but also we want students to see themselves as students. If I don't define myself as a student, I'm going to think about myself as something else and would not necessarily do my best in school. All schools around the world are working on graduation rates. I know Ireland has a fairly good statistic on that regard, but we have always students who may not do their very best in school. So we're always working to improve the results for students. Physical health is on teachers' and parents' agendas, and I'm sure here as well. In the United States, they've thrown out the snack machines and the soda machines from schools as they work to have more nutritious lunches and opportunities for students. They have attention to exercise in many locations. First Lady of our country, Michelle Obama, has a program called Let's Move, and it's to help children do exercise more frequently. I consider attendance rates when children are in school as an evidence of good physical health or an emphasis on physical health. Teachers and parents and the children themselves are also interested in emotional growth, and that is to have strong self-esteem, but also to appreciate others who are different from yourself. In the States, we have a very big immigrant population, growing more diverse every day in every location possible. And I know that that's a beginning issue here and in many other countries. And so we want to have youngsters who get along with others who are in their school, because they will get along with them or not when they are young adults and into adulthood. So we have the kinds of connections and relationships that are important to build in a school. And all of these are outcomes for schooling that are important. You may also be working yet on more results. So this is a very big agenda for school improvement. And it often is what we say, teachers work very, very hard in schools to reach this agenda. But they cannot do this work alone. And parents who are well informed work very hard on all of these developmental outcomes. So we know that this is an agenda that we're all addressing to help our youngsters do their very best in school. Well, these are the givens in our schools today across nations. So we say, well, how are we going to reach these very good goals for student learning and development? We know we want excellent schools. We know we want strong families. We want to have healthy communities. This is a popularized picture of my theoretical model that underlies all the work we've done all these years. I call this overlapping spheres of influence. Researchers have to have some highfalutin terms. But overlapping spheres of influence ask you, where do children learn and grow? Where? At home, at school, and in the community. We can't do anything about that. It's social fact. But if we bring the spheres of influence together, then we know that we can help more students do their very best in school, reach their full potential. There still are people out there in all of your countries who say, if the family would just do its job, what's the end of that sentence? Then we, the educators, could do ours. You do your job, I'll do my job, we'll all be happy, go away, don't bother me. And these are sentences of separate spheres of influence. Some educators are happiest under this condition, but it defies what the data say about when children do their best in school. If we leave these spheres separate, then children are sort of left out and they're not sure what their role or job is in these many years. If we bring the spheres of influence together, then we have data showing that students do better in school. Most likely, in this audience of parent leaders and interested educators who understand parents as important, most of you know that this is the model for student success in school. And so we really want to be working toward building that as an approach in our schools. Everyone here knows that family engagement is important. or you wouldn't be here. You're leaders in your areas. And you probably have some good ideas about what should be going on to help parents understand their children's education from the earliest grades through secondary school and into higher education. The what is fairly well known, and people talk about that. They would like this to happen. What we've been working on in the States and across nations is how. How do we make this happen so that every school can really work better with its families and meet the needs of diverse families, families who differ socioeconomically, culturally, racially, however the diversity bears itself in your nation. And the how is the difficult part of this work. As hard as it is to do the research that underlies the work, the harder job is the implementation of the how-to. And that's what we're really talking about today. Because only with the how-to will more and more families feel like partners in their children's education. What we've learned is we really have to think in new ways about this work so that we can take common phrases and things we thought we knew and change them just a little bit in these new directions so that we can do them better with more families to support more children in their success in school. Everything has changed since I started to do this work. The definition of our work has changed. It used to be called parent involvement. Well, it's still so easy to say that we still say that phrase. But we mean school, family, and community partnerships. And so this is a cover of our handbook that we use, trying to share all the secrets. There's no secrets because it's all in the handbook. But the notion of calling this work school, family, and community partnerships changes the emphasis from this is up to parents to do on their own. If you do it, you're a good leadership parent. Versus schools have a role to play. Families have a role to play. The community has roles to play if we want all of these folks to really work together in partnership to bring those overlapping spheres of influence together. And so when you go home, I am begging you, one thing, please do not say, oh, I heard this interesting talk, I hope, on parents. This is not about parents. You're the parents, but this work is not about the parents. The work is about student success in school and how we mobilize all the resources that are available to help children do their very best from the earliest grades on. So we are talking about school, family, and community partnerships. In that partnership school, the welcoming school that's doing all that work. The responsibilities have changed from the time I started this work. In the old days, it was up to parents or organized by a few leaders. In schools today, where this is an agenda for action, there's still just a few voices that we hear. What we know is that really this must be part of school organization in order for this to be formally accepted by your schools. And this is where your leadership will come in, those of you who are here in the EPA or NPC group as parents. We have to let your schools know that there's a new agenda out there. Maybe we should look into this. Let's call the NPC and find out more about this. And they'll be busy people. And so will your Department of Education. And so can you as parent leaders. What we've learned is this must be organized by what we call an action team for partnerships. In the old days, this was one person. In the States, often the schools will fund a parent liaison. One person, Mrs. Smith. She's in charge of parents. Got a parent problem? Go see Mrs. Smith. But this is not about parent problems. This is about student success in school. And so as a formal part of school organization, I would like you to think in the analogy, this is like reading. This is like math. It's like testing. It's like phys ed, if your schools have phys ed. It's a part of a good school. This is not a new idea. In the 1970s, in research called effective schools research, this was on the list for effective schools, always at the bottom. Here are these things for effective schools. And there would be, good school curriculum, challenging math curriculum, reading, science, testing, assessments, and so forth, family and community involvement. And the schools would be so busy trying to do all the other things on the effective schools list that this would be on the back burner. In the 1980s in the United States and into the 90s, they had the comprehensive school reform movement, a list of 11 things for comprehensive school reform. Family and community was on that list at the bottom, down at the bottom. So by the time you got there, you're saying, oh my gosh, the schools and teachers are working so hard. We'll get to the family and community involvement part. Now we know in the 2000s this is central to school organization. It has to be really formalized in some sensible way. And the way we've learned to do that is with an action team for partnerships. While others are working on many other things in the school, this team is only working on outreach to all families, not the few leaders. And you may serve on such a team. Here's what a team would look like. 2 or 3 teachers, 2 or 3 parents, the principal, of course. If the principal does not want this work to happen in your schools, it isn't going to happen. So the principal must be on this team, and others put different other people on the team who know families are important, the nurse, counselors, often even the school secretary, who's the first line of communication with the folks who call the school. At the high school or secondary level, which I know you are not, you are the primary grades, but you may have influence someday, there should be students on the high school or secondary team. This is an award-winning team at the high school level from the states. We give awards to sites that work with us for 2 years or more that show they can take all the things I'm talking about today and make it work in their community for their children with their families. Pasco, Washington is a poor, rural, farming community with 90% Latino families who speak mostly Spanish. But they have learned how to work with their families to help their children do better in school. And this is their team, the team that reaches out not to 1 or 2 parents, but to all of the children's families in the high school, which is more difficult than your agenda at the primary school level. Here's a primary school team from South Carolina. Florence, South Carolina is a poor, rural, very rural area in South Carolina, and they've been working to reach out to families for 2 or more years. What do they do? What is the function of the team? First, they review the school goals in the school improvement plan. How many of your schools do you know have a school improvement plan that sets goals? They have goals for the school. How many know that's happening? How many don't know if the school has such a plan? I'm told they do. So the notion is, if you do not know, you're part of this agenda. In the goals, they choose 4 goals, 2 academic goals, a non-academic goal, and a goal to make a welcoming place. We can't ask parents to be engaged in reading if we don't have a welcoming school. So we have always that as part of the agenda. The team writes a 1-year action plan for partnerships. And the plan sets the schedule. Here's how we will be working with families on these varied goals, academic meaning reading and math, or science and writing, or whatever your school is working on to help children do better in their skills and scores. A non-academic goal might be attendance, behavior, anti-bullying, reducing or eliminating bullying. I know that's on people's agendas here. People can say, well, we want to have that happen. Our question always is, how will that happen? By teachers working alone or by mobilizing all available resources? And so we want to then write our plan of how this is going to happen and when. Who is in charge? Not always Mrs. Smith. It's going to be shared among all the folks on that team, and even people not on the team. If my school were working on reading improvement, I might have a summer reading planning activity and ask the public librarian to take charge. She may not even be on the team, but she has the skills and knowledge, and I, as a member of the team, can delegate that or request her or his participation. So this is an action-oriented team that is then going to implement a plan. You know, one of the things in education land that people worry about is plans that are written and put on shelves. And they sit there until the next plan has to be written. Not a very good plan. We have to implement plans. And in our work, the missing link in all of this work on family and community engagement has been evaluation. How do we assess how well our schools are reaching out to all families in ways that help students do better in school? That's been the missing link historically in the States and in other nations. We do things. We might have wonderful activities. I'm very sure that all of your schools have at least one super excellent family engagement activity that everyone enjoys. But we don't know how the program is developing unless we evaluate and assess the teamwork, the plan, and the progress. And finally, continually improve. There's no point in thinking about this topic as an event. We're not talking about a great spring fair or a book swap. We're talking about a program of good partnerships that gets better every year so that more and more families are engaged in productive ways. That's what a team does. It's very focused, laser-like on outreach to all families in ways that matter, that teachers are working on, so that they have that support from family and community. Structurally, we know in many schools there's a school improvement team or council. How many have a school improvement advisory team in their schools? How many don't know? That's our agenda. It's our agenda today. Most schools have some advisory group for their principal, but this advisory group are not the implementers or the doers of family and community engagement. We have learned the action team is a committee of that group. If this group does not exist in your schools, that's okay. Then we start with the action team linked to the principal, meaning the principal has a committee who advises him or her about this work on partnerships. And then the committee has the agenda of writing the plan for 2 academic goals, 1 non-academic goal, and 1 overall goal for good partnerships. Now, your school teachers have many more goals. They might have 10. They might have reading, math, science, social studies, writing, phys ed. They might have a whole slew of goals for students. We learned that family engagement really has to be focused, and this team can really handle 4. And that's why we divide them up as 2 academic goals, 1 non-academic goal, and the overall goal for good partnerships. That makes a reasonable, feasible, working plan for the year for outreach to families to change the reputation of the school from one that isn't communicative with all families to one that really is trying hard. And because that bottom bullet says, and gets better every year, that's really an important part of the story. In the old days, this was off to the side, as I said, back burner. Now we know there's 6 types of involvement that can be goal-linked to those goals that are set and part of a comprehensive plan. The framework of 6 types of involvement that people use to activate this program is a way to get parents engaged who cannot be in the building every day. Many parents work full or part-time during the school day. They cannot come to the school building all the time. And so we have to have different ways to engage families. Parenting helps parents understand child and adolescent development. Communicating, all their schools try to communicate with parents How many schools send home report cards? How many people understand the report cards? That's an agenda item. So the notion of communication is to help people really understand their child's progress through the schools. Volunteering has to do with the help that is given at the building, but also to stretch the definition of volunteers. Some parents cannot come to the building, but they may be able to help at home. And we stretch one more spot for audiences at your school. Who do you call a volunteer? If people come to support sports activities, or the band, or the chorus, or drama productions, or award assemblies, they're giving their time to support children's activities. And they're actually volunteering their time in an interesting way. We have schools in the States who have a little card for all of the audience activities. And if you come, you get a little punch in the card. If you get 8 punches during the year, you're invited to the volunteer lunch, because you have given that time to support the school and children's learning. Very important. What would the children do without audience? It's a kind of a recognition. Type 4 has to do with learning at home, has to do with help on homework. We have a process called TIPS, Teachers Involve Parents in Schoolwork, which helps teachers design homework that requires the child to show and share with you, the parent, what they're learning in class, rather than expecting you, the parent, to know how to teach every subject every year to every child. It changes the way we think about homework and the word help, to encourage, to motivate, to monitor, to interact with a child on their work, but at the outset being the child is the teacher of what is being taught in school. Parents cannot come frequently to the school building to learn how you're teaching math this week, because they would have to come next week to learn how you're teaching math next week. I couldn't go to my son's workshops all the time. I was out in the world talking about parent involvement. If you work during the day, you can't go to your child's workshops because you're out in the world in other roles. So we have to have the types of involvement that give everyone an opportunity to be engaged, to be involved. Type 5 is your role, the parents in decision-making roles who are on PTA, PTO, or your parent organizations in your nations. The voices of parents and how representatives or parent leaders reach out to the other parents who have no intention of being leaders but who want a say when there's a decision to come up is type 5. And type 6, collaborating with the community, are mobilizing all the resources in communities. In the States, business partners are popular in schools. How many schools have business partners here? Business partners? Oh my gosh. So there's a big agenda, not just with businesses, but partnerships are being made with senior citizen groups, faith-based organizations, colleges and universities, the veterinary community. All kinds of resources are in our communities, no matter how so economically distressed they are. These 6 types create a comprehensive partnership program. Each of the types raises challenges. In education, if they solve one challenge, do you know what happens? We get a new challenge. In the old days, these used to be called barriers. You will still hear people say, what are the barriers to parent involvement? 2 bad words in one sentence. Because we don't call them barriers anymore. And we don't want parent involvement. We want to say school, family, community partnerships. Barriers meant different families from different groups are hard to reach or difficult to communicate with. Mobile and migrant families are very challenging in the States. When we have these challenges, the issue really is that we're using a deficit model. We're pointing to families. Well, they can't be involved. They don't want to be involved. They don't care. And we've learned in our data that is none of it true. So the notion is, how do we develop a sense of our realities, and every school has its own realities of solutions to these challenges. The challenges are real. Challenges is a euphemism for barriers. Don't tell. But the notion is we have solutions that are sought, found, and shared. In our work, and I hope that you will do the same thing here, we have a book each year called Promising Partnership Practices, where the sites we work with share their best practice so that others across the country or elsewhere will know what's going on and how to do it in our community. And you may not be able to do it exactly the way it was done in Florence, South Carolina, but you might get an inkling of an idea from their story in these books. And all of the things I'm showing you are on our website, and you'll get a copy of the web address that you can just check into. This chock full of information. This is a strengths model. Every family has strengths. We just have to find what they are, and we have to tap those strengths. Every community, no matter how difficult, has strengths. We have to find and tap the strengths. In the old days, this was a preschool topic. My inspiration way back when was Head Start, a program for preschools in the States that ruled by legislation that families should be involved in their preschool children's education. And our question became, when does that stop? When does family involvement stop being important? And what we learned, it's really all grade levels. I have students who have done dissertations through the high school grades. And at every grade level, there are age-appropriate activities that parents need to be informed and engaged with in order to help their children do their very best. Children have a tendency to slop off. That's their job. They have to enjoy childhood. Parents' job is to be a knowledgeable nag. And the notion is it must be knowledgeable, which means the school must communicate, so that you can urge a child in the direction that really the child wants to go to. They just need that push and that support and the engagement that says, you know, you have a decision to make as a youngster, and we're going to help you with that work. In the old days, this was school-by-school decision. And I would go into a school in Baltimore when I was first learning how to do this work and see a nice activity, and the teachers would say to me, "Shh, don't tell anybody. This is our activity. We don't want this to be around." Now we know that this is a multi-level leadership agenda where schools are doing the work because that's where the children are, but they're being assisted by districts or regions, organizations like your NPC will do for you, and others. At the national level, your Department of Education, your ministry is thinking about how they can help you understand this agenda. We call this nested networks of leadership. The school is helped by its areas, organizations, and its Department of Education, and anyone else who can weigh in to help schools see the point and to help them do the work, and then to recognize good work and share it so that people can get some ideas that there's a lot of activity going on here on this topic. The leadership line that we'll be working on tomorrow says, we want some shepherds. Ireland is very famous for its sheep. We want some shepherds who are going to guide schools, not just by doing the leadership level activities that are presently going on in organizations like NPC, but also to be able to facilitate school teams, to guide them, to support and encourage them on this agenda. The point of all this work is not just to say we're involving parents. The point is to reach results for students. In the old days, this was about parent outcomes. Schools would actually have a little checklist and check off the parents who came to a workshop. 4 parents came. Oh my gosh, that was a lot of work for 4 parents. The next workshop, 8 parents came. We improved by 100%. Statistics can lie. But the notion is it isn't good enough to measure parent outcomes. The point is we want to link student outcomes to the way we connect with parents so that nobody is wasting time in the engagement activities that are planned, implemented, and assessed. Otherwise, we're back in the old days. So that's why the action plan that is written, as I showed you, is linked to goals for student success. How do we activate the 6 types of involvement to reach a particular goal? In our handbook, you would see 10 pages like this to give you ideas for different outcomes. I'm showing you just one this morning, which says, here's a school working on reading with the children. The teachers are working hard on reading or literacy school goals, and they're holding workshops with parents of young children to help them know how to read a book with a young child. You don't just read a book, you ask questions, you try to predict the next page. You have all kinds of little tricks for reading aloud with young children. They had parent-teacher student conferences about reading. Instead of trying to cover everything in a parent-teacher conference, they focused on reading so that they could zero in on what's going to be the role for the next marking period to help these children do better in reading. They had reading buddy volunteers, readers who came in as volunteers to read with children who needed some help, either reading aloud, listening, talking about words, and so forth. And reading homework that linked reading with writing, which is really a part of the literacy agenda. They had their parent organization not just hold meetings, nothing could be more boring, but had the parent organization working with the school and the team to do book swaps and other kinds of activities that they could support through the parent organization. I know that you have very active parent associations here. They can be a big help on this agenda. And then donations from business partners for books that children can have at home. Affluent children's parents can buy books. Poor children's parents need some help in creating a home library. And so business partners can be a big help along that line. And you'll see many of these activities in the books of promising partnership practices on the website. Evaluating results. In the old days, it was optional. Now we know it is essential. And the issue is how we evaluate the quality of the organization, of the team and its work, the plan and its implementation, and the results that we see occurring. Results are the most difficult part of this activity and require a research component, which is a little bit harder, but even without it, the evaluation of the team is a pretty easy thing to do. We help our schools do that evaluation, and I'm hoping that NPC can do the same. In the old days, networking was really minimal. Schools did not know what was going on down the street in the next school, or the school in a feeder pattern at a transition point. Now we know we can share success stories very easily if we have an organization or the Ministry of Education that is about that sharing. On websites these days, many of our state departments will have a section for partnerships. And even if they can do nothing else, they can share good things that are happening across place. In the old days, this was about pointing fingers. Who's involved and who's not. Everything we talked about this morning is about equity. Who's involved, who's not? Who are you reaching and who are you not reaching in your schools? Who understands the communications and who doesn't quite yet? Those are the questions that the actions we take have to address. And the actions now must communicate with everybody. That's where the team's work comes in. If we put this burden on one person, on the principal, it cannot happen. That principal is already the hardest person in the universe. So we need this team committee approach. Budgets in the old days were not well allocated, or not allocated at all. Now we have to as one of my contacts yesterday at dinner was saying, we have to have creative budgeting. Creative budgeting is a good word. We find the funds to support the activities in the action plan. They're not expensive. They're not debilitating in terms of the strict restrictions on school budgets these days. But they do have to be identified and they have to be planned for. So, we've had a short course in almost an hour, a whole course in an hour. Now I'm going to give you each a quiz. We talked about principal leadership. We talked about the definition of school, family, and community partnerships at all grade levels with an action team who's responsible for making sure this is going to be planned and happen, using the 6 types of involvement linked to school goals, with an equity theme which must underlie our work, with a focus on results for students. Budgeting is critical, evaluation is essential, and networking is enriching. District level leadership or organization leadership, such as we're hoping to create, develop, and strengthen tomorrow with NPC, are all parts of a good program. Now I want you to pick an elbow partner next to you. If you're the odd man out at the end of a row, turn around. And what I would like you to do is discuss with your elbow partner one thought each, because we only have a minute or two. So I'm going to give each of you 1 minute to tell your elbow partner which change that we talked about, there they all are at the top of the slide, which change is most important in your school to make a better partnership program. Which do you think is really the next step in a new direction for the school you know, or the school where your child is, or the school you are helping? Tell each other. You've got 1 minute each. Go to it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear me, wave. If you can hear me, wave. If you can hear me, wave. That is beautiful music. Beautiful music. It says that you heard something that made some sense, that would take you in some new direction. How many did hear something that they thought they can use or find the principal's ear to help them go in a new direction? Good. So let's review. Which are the school-based components that we're talking about in your schools? Not complicated. Having a team, writing a plan, using the framework of 6 types of involvement so parents can get engaged in many ways in many places. Finding that budget that will support the activities that are written in the plan. Having a time for the team to meet. We didn't talk about that, but there are teams that get constructed that don't meet. We ask teams to meet at least once a month for 1 hour a month, not a difficult agenda. And then evaluating to improve the programs. If we link with NPC, we can help them help you do that. Here are many of our publications that you'll see on our website. The Handbook, a book for principals mattering. Multicultural Education is a new book that came out to work with diverse families. Family Reading Nights help people organize genre-based family reading nights on biographies or mysteries or histories or joke books or what have you that make a reading night more interesting at the elementary level. And a textbook for college courses, if you happen to be teaching one. And then our books at our home base on promising partnership practices, the TIPS interactive homework, and these samplers in the middle are derived from the books of practices to identify 10 good activities on those particular goals. Anya has told you will get a copy of the slides when you turn in your evaluation, so you don't need to take notes on this. But there's a Q&A period later on this morning after we hear from the Minister of Education, and so please write or have the questions that are going on in your minds about how do we use these research-based processes in our school? What can we do to have some help on developing this agenda? Our website, www.partnershipschools.org, is chock full of information. It's basically free. Some of it you do have to be a member, but there's enough on there to keep you busy for a long, long time. I enjoyed talking with you about this new direction. I hope you heard something that will be useful in your schools to take some action. And thank you very, very much.